German conditionals and if clauses show possibilities and hypothetical situations. Conditionals in German are mainly expressed using wenn, if or when, and they're categorized into three main types. 1. Real conditions that show possible situations, also known as the indicative. 2. Hypothetical conditions that show unlikely but possible situations, also known as Konjunktiv 2. And 3. Unreal conditions that show impossible situations, also known as Konjunktiv 2. Konjunktiv translates as the German subjunctive, and even though it's a topic for the next videos, in this video we'll focus on conditions which are a part of the subjunctive. So, I will not explain the subjunctive in this video specifically, but it will be a major part of conditionals and if clauses. To form any German if clause which will show a condition, we can use the following patterns. Wenn, a subordinating clause, a required comma, and a main clause. This pattern can also be switched. A main clause plus wenn plus a subordinate clause without a comma. As a note, since wenn is a subordinating conjunction, a verb will always move to the end in the wenn clause, and this is an important rule to follow. This is the pattern for German if clauses, which is very similar to English. Now, let's see how every condition works. A real condition, the indicative, will express probable situations using conditions that are likely to happen. This conditional can be used in the present, future, and perfect tenses, meaning that the pattern for it will begin with wenn, continue with a subordinating clause in the present tense, and finish with a main clause in a present, future, or perfect tense. For instance, we can say, wenn es morgen regnet, bleibe ich zu Hause. Wenn du willst, können wir ins Kino gehen. At the same time, we can switch the order. Ich bleibe zu Hause, wenn es morgen regnet. Wir können ins Kino gehen, wenn du willst. In addition, the subordinate clause doesn't have to be in the present tense. It can also be in a perfect tense, like, wenn du deine Hausaufgaben gemacht hast, kannst du spielen. Du kannst spielen, wenn du deine Hausaufgaben gemacht hast. This is how the first conditional works in German. The second conditional, Konjunktiv 2, expresses situations that are unlikely or hypothetical, but still possible. This conditional will use the German subjunctive in both clauses, along with different tenses, words, and phrases. Now here, much of the known German vocabulary will start to change, and you'll see concepts that I still have not covered yet. As I mentioned, the German subjunctive is for the next videos, but for the following conditionals, it would be better to use it so that it's more understandable by the time we get to the subjunctive. So, if you see words that you don't know yet, don't worry about them. The following conditional has two patterns. Using Konjunktiv 2 with würde, would, plus an infinitive, or using Konjunktiv 2 in the Präteritum with irregular, strong verb forms, like wäre, hätte, käme, etc. As I said, do not worry about the new words. Simply focus on the structure. When following a pattern in this conditional, it's best to begin with wenn, continue with a subordinate clause in the Präteritum using Konjunktiv 2, and finish with a main clause of würde plus an infinitive, also using Konjunktiv 2. The pattern is quite complicated, so to understand it, let's see some examples. Wenn ich reich wäre, würde ich eine Weltreise machen. Wenn ich mehr Geld hätte, würde ich ein Haus kaufen. At the same time, we can switch the order. Ich würde eine Weltreise machen, wenn ich reich wäre. Ich würde ein Haus kaufen, wenn ich mehr Geld hätte. In addition, it's possible to express hypothetical conditional statements without würde, but in that case, Konjunktiv 2 will be more formal, like, wenn ich Zeit hätte, käme ich mit. Ich käme mit, wenn ich Zeit hätte. This is a rare formal instance in this conditional, so I would recommend using the basic pattern. This is how the second conditional works in German. The third conditional, also Konjunktiv 2, expresses situations that are completely impossible and didn't happen. This conditional will likewise use Konjunktiv 2, only this time in the past perfect tense, using hätte or wäre, which are strong forms of haben and sein, along with a past participle. So, the pattern for this conditional will begin with wenn, continue with a subordinate clause in the past perfect, and finish with a main clause using Konjunktiv 2 or wurde plus a past participle. This pattern is very complicated, considering that it's the last conditional. So to make sure that we fully understand it, let's have some examples. Wenn du gestern gelernt hättest, hättest du die Prüfung bestanden. Wenn ich nicht so müde gewesen wäre, wäre ich zur Party gegangen. The order can also be switched. Du hättest die Prüfung bestanden, wenn du gestern gelernt hättest. Ich wäre zur Party gegangen, wenn ich nicht so müde gewesen wäre. In addition, the main clause doesn't always have to be in the past perfect. Alternatively, we can use würde plus a past participle, like wenn er sich beeilt hätte, würde den Zug nicht verpasst haben. Würde den Zug nicht verpasst haben, wenn sich beeilt hätte. This is how the third conditional works in German, and this is how conditionals overall work in German. Still, many more concepts need to be known about them. To emphasize uncertainty and formality, German has the word falls, meaning in case, and it's used exactly like wenn. Falls es regnet, bleiben wir zu Hause. Within the sentence, we're using the word zu, and speaking of this word, German also has other conditional structures that would make a condition, using prepositions and adverbs, like ohne, zu, and sonst. Ohne zu lernen kann man die Prüfung nicht bestehen. Beeil dich, sonst verpasst du den Bus. Moreover, the key differences between German and English conditionals are in the structure. German often prefers würde plus an infinitive for hypothetical conditions using the second conditional, like wenn ich reich wäre, würde ich reisen. If I were rich, I would travel. However, German doesn't use the would have construction in the third conditional, like wenn ich Zeit gehabt hätte, hätte ich geholfen. If I'd had time, I would have helped. English has the would have construction, specifically the infinitive have, but as you can see, German uses the past perfect without it. It's tempting to add haben to the statement, but it would be wrong, so that's the difference between German and English. Furthermore, there are nuances between conjunctions that activate the conditionals, such as wenn and falls. While wenn is the default, falls has a stylistic and tonal variation. It's more formal and implies in case or uncertainty, while wenn is frequently neutral. Wenn du willst, können wir essen gehen. Falls du Hilfe brauchst, sag mir Bescheid. You probably noticed that every main clause I showed always began with the conjugated verb, and there's a specific reason why. In German, when the wenn clause comes first, the verb in the main clause comes after the comma because it follows the fundamental rule of German sentence structure. The verb must be in the second position in the sentence, and the subject must be next to the verb. When it comes to if clauses, this explains why a main clause would be considered to be in the second position, and therefore the conjugated verb is in the second position, next to the subject. Continuously, when using modal verbs in hypothetical situations, German will use the forms of the verbs in Konjunktiv 2, which are sometimes irregular and strong. Können, könnte, müssen, müsste, dürfen, dürfte, sollen, sollte, wollen, wollte, mögen, möchte. The conjugations are irregular and end in te in Konjunktiv 2, and this concept will be explained in the subjunctive. On a final note, it's important to understand how conditionals function in spoken German with simplification. In spoken German, conditionals are often shortened and use würde instead of complete Konjunktiv 2 forms because they're easier to pronounce. For instance, instead of saying, wenn ich genug Geld hätte, kaufte ich ein Auto, native speakers usually say, wenn ich genug Geld hätte, würde ich ein Auto kaufen. The first sentence is technically correct but formal, while the second one is perfectly acceptable in everyday speech. In English, it makes no difference because the sentences are both in the same condition, but in spoken German, it's something to watch out for. Overall, this is how conditionals and if clauses fully work in German.